The National Association of Police Athletic Activities League's youth organization welcomes you to its From the Voices of Youth virtual town hall series presented by Microsoft and supported by Extended Stay America. We thank you as well as our panelists for joining today's town hall event and anxiously look forward to having some great discussion and learning from each other, all in the name of youth. So now let's get started and meet today's panelists.
And we got to come together as a people.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another version of National PAL hosts from the Voices of Youth Town Hall series. Today, we're coming to you live from Charlotte and Mint Hill, North Carolina, in partnership with our Mint Hill PAL program and our Charlotte PAL program. I first want to thank our esteemed guests and panelists, both youth and adults, for participating in this opportunity to have awesome discussion and impactful dialogue. But before we get too far, I'd like to welcome Marissa Hueller from Microsoft to welcome us as well. Marissa?
Thank you, Jeff, and hello, Charlotte. I'm so pleased to get to participate today and just kind of kick us off a little bit. I think we are in line for an excellent conversation among Charlotte's current and I would imagine possibly future civic leaders, which is very exciting. As Jeff said, my name is Marissa Hueller. I lead the Justice Reform Initiative at Microsoft. I'm located right now, I'm sitting here in near Seattle, Washington, so unfortunately not in Charlotte, but I would love to visit. What is the Justice Reform Initiative? It is a focus on leveraging data and technology to eliminate racial disparities across the justice system. And we do that by focusing on what we call kind of the justice system's front door, which includes policing, prosecution, and kind of expanding opportunities for diversion or alternatives to incarceration and arrest. We think it's so vitally important to be community connected as we're all reimagining public safety as we're doing today. So I'm really grateful to you, Jeff, and to Michelle Thomas at Microsoft for creating this series. It reminds me of Dr. King's words from his letter from a Birmingham jail about the interrelatedness of all communities in all states and how what happens to one directly affects all of us indirectly. And I think that's really what this series is about. So thank you. Very excited to be here, proud to support it, and looking forward to what we'll uncover today. Back to you, Jeff.
Great. Thank you, Marissa. We started this in August of 2020, initially looking at this being a 6-city tour. And because of the success and the awesome dialogue that we've had all across this country, we are continuing to add additional cities and states to this initiative. And yes, I definitely would like to thank one of our founding partners of Microsoft, and as you stated, Michelle Thomas and Cindy and a host of others from Microsoft for their involvement and engagement. But also want to thank Kevin Henry and Extended Stay America for being one of our partners in this initiative that gives our youth an opportunity to be seated at the table and to be heard. And that's why we are looking forward to this evening. Thank you on behalf of National PAL and our over 250 chapters across the world, serving in excess of 1.5 million young people all across this country, where our mission is in engaging kids, cops, and communities, and we are having great success and impact with that. So with that, let's get started. I'm excited about this evening, and I want to turn it over to tonight's moderator, an awesome young man. He's coming to us from New Orleans, Louisiana, Mason Horn. Mason, again, welcome and thank you for coming and being our moderator for this evening. I'm going to turn it over to you and look forward to having a great evening. Mason?
Good evening and welcome all guests of the 2021 National Pell Town Hall Series. Today we're coming from Mint Hill, Charlotte, North Carolina, with our Pell Program partnership. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce all of the speakers for tonight. We will have we will have Brunel Escate, we will have Jade Jones, Khalil Smith, and Emily Mills as our youth panelists. We will have the mayor, Mayor Vi Lyles. We'll have um, Mecklenburg County District Attorney Spencer Merriweather. We will also have joining with us tonight Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Chief Johnny Jennings and, and Mr. Hollis Williams from the Regional Director of the U.S. Senate and Local Government of Microsoft. And lastly, we'll have Raymond Felton, who is a 15-year NBA veteran. And now we will start our town hall discussion.
Okay, and who will be your first person for questioning, Mason?
Okay, we're going to start off our questioning with Ms. Brunel Escate. Please state your name, the city that you're from, and who your question is directed to.
Hi, my name is Brunella Escate. I'm a sophomore from Rocky River High School. My question is for the Mayor, V. Lyles. So a lot of people are immigrating to North Carolina. It's only a matter of time before the schools become overpopulated. Are you planning to open more schools to help assist with this, or are you going to just increase classroom size?
Well, thanks for the question. That's a great question about how we're growing and growing so fast and from so many different places. So I wish I could say that I'm in charge of schools, though. Although maybe right now this would be one of the tougher things to deal with. As mayor of Charlotte, we don't really fund or support the school systems, but as mayor of Charlotte, we know that we're going to grow 200,000 people, the size of the city of Asheville, in the next 10 years, and then another 200,000 in the next 10 years. So we're actually planning on being as big as bringing in a city the size of Asheville and Greensboro to our community. And yes, we will have many needs, schools being one of the top ones, but infrastructure. For us, for the city of Charlotte, what I believe is most important is that people of all walks of life ought to be able to afford to live in Charlotte. So we have a very aggressive affordable housing program. The second thing is I think that people ought to have good paying jobs. It doesn't mean you have to have a job that pays a lot. It means a job that you choose and it pays you enough to live the life that you want to lead. And then the final thing that we have a responsibility for is to get you from home to work and work to home safely and in a way that you go home and you feel like you're in a safe and a neighborhood that you would like to be in. So I'm really glad to see Chief Jennings and District Attorney Merriweather on the panel tonight, because safety isn't just about the physical safety. But when I think about safety, I think about sidewalks, I think about trees, I think about places for kids to play. So what I would say to you is you can talk to the chief and the district attorney about that safety aspect of what we're doing. But for me, what I want is a community where neighborhoods understand that they can all be different and still be great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brunel Escate, as well as Mayor Vi Lyles. Our next panelist is going to be Ms. Jade Jones. Please state your school that you're from and who your question directed to.
Hi, my name is Jade Jones, and I'm a senior at East Mecklenburg High School. My question will be directed at Mr. Raymond Felton. My question is that there has been many instances where equality was denied within the sports world. For example, the difference in the NCAA women and men basketball weight rooms and meals, the large gap in general pay, and more. As a male athlete, do you think this is wrong? And if not, why? And if so, what can you and other athletes do to help change the difference in treatment?
Great question, Jay. Hello, everybody. I've had that question a lot throughout my career, definitely ever since I've been in the NBA. And I do think it's unfair that the WNBA and with the girls in NCAA gets treated differently in so many ways, because the females are very, very talented, and the things that they do on that basketball court, just talking basketball because that's what I know more about, the things that they do on that court is amazing. It's just like seeing NBA basketball to me in my eyes. And I think those girls should get paid the same amount of money that we get paid. But at the same time, I got to look at it on the business standpoint too, because, if you look at the history of NBA basketball, when Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, those guys, they didn't make the type of money that these guys make today, and that's all about growing a brand. And that's what the WNBA and with the female sports, they have to grow a brand, for amount of years. And then for girls like yourself, and I have a daughter that's 5, when they grow up to be my age and being an adult, maybe they will get paid that amount of money that these guys get paid now. And it's just all about a process. But do I think that it should be equal? Without a doubt. I think it should be equal 100%.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Jade Jones and Mr. Raymond Felton. For those of you that are viewing today, please enter your questions into the Q&A section of the live chat. That way your question can be read and answered by one of our panelists. Next up, we're going to have Mr. Khalil Smith. Please state your name, your school, and who your question is directed to.
Thank you, Mason. Hello, everybody. My name is Khalil Smith. I am 16 years old, and I'm a rising junior at Rocky River High School. And my first question is directed to Police Chief Johnny Jennings. What things have the CMPD done to avoid a situation like the George Floyd incident?
Yeah, thank you, Khalil. Appreciate that. So appreciate being on as well. One of the things that we looked at as soon as we saw that incident, and we do this quite often when we see things, whether it's across the country or within our own department, is we first look at our policies and see what would we be able to do to cover to ensure that our officers aren't doing the same actions, and that we're ensuring that there are policy violations that go along with some of the things that we've seen that we just don't like to see across the country. But as soon as that happened, one of the things we looked at was our policy as related to chokeholds. And our policy was kind of lacking a little bit. It talked about airflow, and it didn't really talk about circulation or blood flow to the brain, which is similar. Both of those cases can ultimately result in death, as we saw with George Floyd. So as soon as that happened, we looked at how we can avoid that and make sure that it's not anything that we train to do, which we don't and we never have. But we also wanted to make sure it was covered that any officer that was involved in anything like that, whether it resulted in injury or not, that there would be disciplinary action behind it. And we also immediately put in a duty to intervene. You saw in that case where a lot of the other officers were standing around and didn't intervene and stop it. So now we do have policy that would require officers to step in and ensure that something like this doesn't happen if they see another officer involved in egregious behavior. So those are just a couple of things that we put in place right away, and I think they're going to be very effective to make sure that we don't have an incident similar to that in Charlotte, and move forward. We always will continue to learn and grow as an agency.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Khalil Smith and Mr. Johnny Jennings. Next, we'll go on to Ms. Emily Mills. Please state your name, your school, and who your question is directed to. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Emily Mills, and I'm a rising freshman at North Carolina A&T. My question is toward the police chief as well. What I want to ask you is, it's similar to Khalil's question, but I want to know what has the police station that you run, how do they make sure that the racial disparities don't get in the way when you're dealing with somebody that you're detaining, or just in general the workforce with your Black officers and your white officers?
Yeah, so that's very important to us. First of all, I want to just say that I think it's important that our department mirrors what our city, the people that we serve as well. Our jurisdiction, I believe it's about 34% African American community and about 13-14% Latino. But our department lacks there. We have about 17% African Americans on our department and about 6 or 7% Latino. So first of all, we have to be able to do that so that we can mirror what our community looks like. And with that, we talk about training all the time, such as cultural competency and implicit bias. And I look at that as not enough. It needs to be, instead of training, it needs to be education. So we do things within our department to make sure that we are out in the communities and getting to know the people that we serve, so that there is no fear factor that is heightened because someone doesn't look like you. And even officers, when we hire them, we want to make sure they have diverse experience as individuals. So if we see somebody that's applied to our department, they could be a very good candidate, but we see that they're lacking in diversity skills or diversity interactions within their life, and we invite them to, hey, give it a year, come to Charlotte, live for a year, and experience other cultures, other races, and then apply again, and we'll consider you at that point. So there's just an abundance of things. I don't want to dominate the time, but there's a lot of things that we are doing and a lot of things that we're looking at doing as far as to improve those relationships.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Johnny Jennings, and thank you, Miss Emily Mills. We have a question from the Q&A chat. Remember, if you're viewing, please go to the Q&A chat if you would like your question read. Question for Chief Jennings. Would your department be interested in activity bags of sport balls to give to the youth in our communities, courtesy of Dick's Sporting Goods? If so, how may I contact you?
Oh, that's great, of course. Yeah. Yeah, we would love to. We have a lot of opportunities, particularly with our summer programs. I just did a meeting today with kicking off our summer program. So what you can do is go on the website, and you can find me on the website with my email address. It's johnny.jennings@cmpd.org. And also my executive officer is on there as well. So if you go on the website and copy both of us on an email, I would be more than happy to take a look at that and return it and see how we can get that arranged and organized. But thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Chief Johnny Jennings, and thank you, Anonymous, for the chat Q&A question. We're going to go ahead to Miss Brunella Escate for her next question. Please state the school that you attend and who your question is directed to. Thank you.
I'm Brunella Escate. I'm a sophomore at Rocky River High School. My question is for Mr. Spencer Merriweather, District Attorney. Has immigration status ever affected how you defended someone in court?
So, Brunella, first of all, it's a pleasure to be with you. It's a pleasure to be with all of you, and thank you for your question. I should explain that as the district attorney, it's my job to assess and prosecute crimes that occur within my jurisdiction. So when it comes to actually defending a person, there are usually other lawyers who will defend someone who's been charged with a crime. It's my responsibility to demonstrate proof that someone did actually commit a crime if I think that's actually what happened. What I can tell you about people who are undocumented or people who have an immigrant status, sometimes that can actually factor into a case, only because like with any victim of a crime, whatever sort of circumstances might make that person more vulnerable or something that I have to take into account. One of the issues where immigration status or documentation status can come into play, in particular, is in human trafficking. A lot of people think about human trafficking with one particular image of people who are carted from one place to another to carry on illicit services, and they're forced to do it. But in fact, human trafficking is far more broad than that. It often involves basically coercing someone to do pretty much anything. And so if I have to explain to a jury or a judge why it is that someone who has been victimized, why they were vulnerable in that particular circumstance, it can help to explain the fact that they felt as if they had to do it because someone was holding their immigration status over their head. I have, before I got elected to the position of district attorney, I was a longtime prosecutor of sexual assaults. And I remember a case that ended up going before a jury where the victim in that case was undocumented. And so she was a little bit slower in calling law enforcement because there were so many things going through her head as to whether or not she was going to get in trouble. Well, that may not necessarily be something that people who are documented think about. And so I need them to be able to empathize with her and the things that she has to contend with on a daily basis, so that that jury can understand that she has every right to the protection of our government as anybody else, that no one, because of their immigration status, deserves to be injured or harmed or have something stolen from them in any way. Brunella, thank you for that question, and I hope I've answered it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brunella and District Attorney Spencer Merriweather. We're going to go ahead and go on to our next panelist, Ms. Jade Jones. Please state your school name and who your question is directed to. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jade Jones, and I'm a senior at East Mecklenburg High School. My question is going to be directed to Police Chief Johnny Jennings. And my question is, more people are killed in the United States from police in comparison to other developed countries. An article by BBC shows the difference in training and highlights how little training police officers have before they are qualified to go into the field officially. Do you think the amount of training in the US is too short? And do you think that extending the length in training could possibly help decrease our stats of death by police in America?
Yeah, great question. And I think we have to look at kind of compartmentalize some of what the study entails. And are they, because if I recall correctly, they're talking mainly of the classroom, the stuff that we do in the academy and when an officer is able to be cut loose and to go out. But what I think people don't quite understand, or when they see that when an officer graduates from the academy, there's still an additional 4 to 6 months of training that they do that's out in the field. So I think when you look at when we hire an officer, it's about a year. It could be, right at a year before that officer is out doing answering calls for service on their own. And then there's also a lot of mandated training throughout the year. So here's my dilemma. I want to look at training more as not just training, you go to a classroom and then we send you off on your way. It needs to be more of an education to where we do the classroom and then we also have some sort of follow up throughout the field and seeing that they're doing what we have taught them in the classroom. So if we can accomplish that and be more intentional about it, then I think we'll be more successful. But the dilemma is to take. We have about 1,800 officers and we're allocated about 1,960, but to get through training with that many officers and to make sure that we're putting them in the classroom, that also takes them off the streets. And we want to make sure that we have to balance that part of it with being able to service the community. But we have to set those expectations that basically playing like we practice. So if we put stuff in place in the classroom, we have to continue to follow up and make sure they're doing it and exercising that in their everyday job. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Johnny Jennings, and thank you, Ms. J. Jones. We're going to go to Mr. Jeff Hood for the Q&A section.
Yes, thanks, Mason. We have a question that has come in, and the question is actually going to be directed to Hollis Williams from Microsoft. Hollis, the question is, what is Microsoft doing to address social injustice in their areas of work, and more particularly within the Charlotte region as well?
Thank you for the question, Jeff, and definitely want to thank the police chief and district attorney and of course Mayor Lyles for participating in this impactful and important event and this conversation in general. At Microsoft, I'll just say broadly, we stepped up. Our CEO a year ago made a commitment to do everything that Microsoft could with our technology and our brand, but we started looking within. I remember the police chief was talking about reflecting the community that the police serves, and likewise in the places where we live, work, and play, Microsoft needed to look internally first and make sure we represented the communities where we work. So our CEO made some commitments to increase our representation, to add more, not just more Black employees, Black and African American employees, but also add more leadership roles that were filled by Black and African American employees at the senior leader, senior director level. Also, we're using our brand. We have a very powerful brand and a very big balance sheet. So going out and helping small Black and African American businesses to grow their business, building our partner community. We've also been very involved, or have a number of programs to increase our supplier diversity. So making sure that all of our needs that we have from vendors and from companies, that we're going to different companies that are run and owned by minority businesses, and specifically Black and African American suppliers. And then the last piece, and this touches here locally here in Charlotte, is really making sure we impact our community. And so that shows up in a couple of different ways. One, you heard from Marissa already in our justice reform work, putting on events such as this and other events to have the conversation, to bring community, policing, and government together. Another area is broadband. We've been doing a lot of work across the country around bringing access, not just devices, but broadband speed access. And that's been huge during COVID for a lot of urban and inner city youth that don't have access to reliable broadband speeds, just furthering the education gap and the digital divide. Another thing that we're doing here locally is we have a lot of programs such as our TEALS program, where we work with schools to train up and increase that emphasis in STEM education. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't call out some of the things that we do from our Charlotte campus here off of Arrowwood. We have our Minority Student Day, where several of the local high schools bring in Black and African American students to the campus. We have a full day where we do everything from coding to exposure to other areas of technology. We have our scholarship program as well, and I don't want to dominate all the time here, but just know that we've committed over hundreds of thousands of dollars just over the last 12 months for Black and African American students to go on to college. And then as a part of our initiative and commitment as well, I also want to highlight that we've given millions of dollars, as well as supported teachers at over, I believe we're up to 18 historically Black colleges and universities. So we're doing a lot. That being said, we're learning and realizing that we still need to do more. Great. I hope I answered the question there, Jeff.
Yes, well, it was from the Q&A, so I hope that you did, and I have a feeling they'll let me know if you didn't. So, so thank you, Hollis. I appreciate that. And Mason, I'm going to turn it back over to you and for our youth panels.
Thank you, Mr. Jeff Hood with National Pell, and thank you, Mr. Hollis Williams, Regional Director of the U.S. Senate and Local Government. We're going to go ahead and start off with our next question with Mr. Mr. Khalil Smith from our youth panelists. Please state your school name as well as who your question is directed to. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mason. Hi, my name is Khalil Stith. I am 16. I'm a rising junior at Rocky River High School. And my next question is a follow-up to Jade's to Mr. Police Chief Johnny Jennings. What kind of training is required for police officers who have to interact with a community that may not trust the police force?
Yeah, so our training is extremely extensive as far as joining the department, but specifically when you talk about community engagement, we have ways that let me just say we're getting ready to kick off a major training session within our department holistically. So we want to make sure, and you're going to see a lot about this in the media next week and even national attention that we've been getting, but we want to make sure that we're providing good customer service to our citizens. And for, that's just it in a nutshell, because a lot of times our interactions with people that we come in contact with every day, even though you might be in a bad situation, that contact or that interaction you have with that officer does not have to be contentious or a bad contact or interaction with the officer. We have about 600,000 citizen police contacts every single year within the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. We only have about 14,000 or so arrests every year. So you have to look at the other, 97 or so % of our contacts, and they don't often involve us arresting someone or being in a use of force. That's a very small percentage. So we're going to make sure that we have our officers that have better outcomes and better interactions with the people that we serve. And we do it every day. We do it. I think we do a good job of it. But just like anything else, if we can educate our officers and have them a better understanding, we want to do that as well. So be more to come on that. You're probably about a week and a half early to ask me that question, but you'll see a lot more here coming up soon.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief Johnny Jennings, and thank you, Mr. Khalil Smith. We're going to go on to our next youth panelist, Ms. Emily Mills. Please state your school and who your question is directed to. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Emily Mills. I'm a freshman in college at North Carolina A&T. My question is for the mayor. I wanted to know if you have personally experienced any type of sexism or racism in your field of work, or if you have, if you know of anybody who has.
Oh, Emily, I grew up in the segregated days of the South. I didn't get to go to an integrated school until I was in high school, and Brown versus the Board of Education was in the early 50s, and I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I tell you, it took a while for South Carolina to even acknowledge that the federal government was enacting laws to help people of color attend and have a good education. So yes, that is something that I think many of us that grew up in the segregated days and went through the civil rights movement can tell you many stories of discrimination, disparity, and just sometimes plain hate. I mean, just sometimes it was just that simple. And today, my greatest hope is that none of us forget that. So when people remind me, I'm going to tell you a story about growing up. I was not quite your age, but my dad had a small business, and he was in South Carolina, and he was doing this job, and it was time, the job was completed, and it was time for him to be paid. And the person that was white that he was working for decided he wasn't going to pay him. It didn't matter that the work was done. It wasn't any defect in the work. He just decided that he was not going to pay my father. And this is the kind of thing that Black men particularly had to deal with. But I want to say something about you as young Black women. and as you grow and you're going to college. I remember that night my dad came home, very, very realistic to me. Just, I can see it now. And I have 5 brothers. There's 6 of us. And I remember my mom feeding us dinner. It was just really early. The sun hadn't gone down and we played outside a lot. And she said, okay, everybody take their bath, you're going to bed. Because she was not going to let her husband, a black man, walk in and before his children be ashamed. And that to me taught me a lesson that I will never, ever forget. One, the strength of the black family is so important, and that we will always have problems with being discriminated against. I don't care what law you passed until attitudes and behavior, which we are going to depend on your generation to push it further down the road. That is going to always be with us until we get to a place that we stop looking at what we really see as color and discrimination and start looking at all of us as people that deserve the opportunity to live and be in this country. So yes, I can talk about sexism too, but that's okay. Race is enough tonight for me. I want to say many of the people on this panel probably could speak to those kinds of issues. And I'm really grateful that you create this forum for us to do it. Racism is subtle today, and you know what subtle means, that it's not as overt. Well, in some parts of the country it is, but a lot of what you'll experience your freshman year, as you go out into this world, I hope won't be overt, but know that there is hidden racism in so many ways, and all of us that have gone through it will hope that you will handle it better and you will actually identify it and know what it is and stand up for yourself. So thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Vi Lyles. Thank you, Miss Emily Mills. And now we're going to go on to Miss Brunella Escate. Please state your school and who your question is directed to. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brunella Escate. I'm from Rocky River High School. My question is for the Mayor V. Lyles. So how are you planning to help out undocumented immigrants in Charlotte? And so are you going to plan to help out the undocumented immigrants or no?
I couldn't understand the question. So you said, how could I help?
Yeah, let me rephrase it. Sorry.
Okay.
So are you going to plan to help out the undocumented immigrants in Charlotte? And if you are, how?
Well, I have already not just planned. A year and a half ago, I created a task force around immigration issues. We went out to every part of the city and had sessions, and I learned so much, the richness of our immigrant community in this city, which is contributing to our growth and our vibrancy. We went places, so, we were at the Morrison Y, and there I learned about the difficulties that people from India coming here on a work visa, and the little things that I didn't know. So if you came here on a work visa and you had a baby here, and that child turned the age of 20, that child has to go back to India. Now, how many of us are willing to send our 20-year-olds someplace where they've never been because the work visa laws are that difficult for you? They're nonsensical, not logical. We also talk a lot about our Latino community, our Vietnamese community, our Hmong community. These are people that have come here for opportunity. And we crafted and took from them things that they said would make it better for our city. And we put those ideas in place. So some of the things that we do now, we support the bilingual preschool on the east side of Charlotte. We actually try to determine how to have banking available for those that aren't able to go and be documented. So I don't believe, I actually know that the last 4 years of this debate has been very, very difficult, and I'm hopeful that the administration now, so I know all of you are really smart students, so I'm going to recommend a book to you. And this book is not a big read, but it explains the immigration issue, and the name of the book is We Wanted Workers. And what it tells you is that while we want workers, we very seldom deal with what we need to do to make people citizens and a part of our democracy. So if you want to write something about this or read something about it, just know that this book was written maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and nothing has changed because of the lack of inaction in Washington, D.C. Thank you. I hope that wasn't too much, but I love to, when you read, you learn. And I think that's an important thing to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Vi Lyles, and thank you, Ms. Brunella Escate. Remember, viewers that are at home, at work, on the streets, please enter your Q&A questions into the chat. That way they can be read and answered. Next, we're going to have Mr. Khalil Smith. Please state your name and who your question is directed to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mason. Hi, everyone. My name is Khalil Stith. I'm 16, and I'm a rising junior at Rocky River High School. And my next question is to District Attorney Spencer Merriweather. Unfortunately, many issues in my school come from issues going on in a lot of other students' neighborhoods, which makes it hard for teachers at my school to teach. So in your role, how can you help address some of those issues to make my school safer?
Well, thank you for that question, Khalil. And I'll tell you, one of the things that is my job to get people to realize on a daily basis is the ripple effect of a crime that's committed. Sometimes there's crimes that people commit and it's because they make a mistake in judgment. Sometimes it's a mistake of youth, someone who is just inexperienced and wasn't thinking and they mess up. Sometimes the impact of a crime can be far more grave and more serious in that it can strike fear into other people. It can make it so that people don't feel like they can just be peaceful and interact with one another safely. And that's the kind of crime that really can really chill an entire neighborhood or an entire community. And increasingly, particularly amongst our young people, we are seeing an increase in that type of crime where people are fearful of one another. I had the opportunity as a kid growing up, which is longer ago than I really care to say, and it's feeling longer by the day. But I felt like I had a childhood where I lived in relative safety. And I believe that every child, every student, certainly at school, deserves that. School is where you learn how to relate to one another. It's how you learn about the world. It's how you learn how to interact with other people. It's how you learn to take lessons and then apply them to larger society. And it's difficult to do those things if you live in fear. For all of our conversations about social justice and all of our conversations about criminal justice, we are really finding the true meaning of what it means to be a member of this society. We cannot lose sight of the impact and the trauma that is cast upon people when they are the victim of a crime. I would ask all of our young people on this call, they say when you see something, say something, and that really does have an impact. That reminds people that when you see wrong being done to some other person, wrong being done to someone's property or to other human beings, call it out. Don't have a tolerance for that at all, because you are better than that. Your community deserves better than that. The more that I, as district attorney, can get that message out to people, the more I'm able to convey that in a courthouse in front of a jury, the more I'm able to tell people who live in a neighborhood that remind them that their neighborhood has value. I think we're lifting up a sort of higher ethic. But that's not something the DA can do. That's something that you can do as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, District Attorney Spencer Merriweather, and thank you, Mr. Khalil Smith. Next, we're going to go on to Ms. Jade. Ms. Jade Jones, please state your school and who your question is directed to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mason. My name is Jade Jones, and I'm a senior at East Mecklenburg High School. My question is again directed at District Attorney Spencer Merriweather, and it kind of coincides with Khalil's question, but my question is, in the Merriweather-Mecklenburg DA bio, it mentions how you grew up with a familial support system that encouraged you to work hard, and I quote, in a career rooted in honesty and service. How do you think that positive support system impacted your life, and how would you stress the importance of adults setting a good environment alongside supporting youth early on?
My parents were both educators. They were teachers. My dad actually had two jobs. One was he was a teacher. He also ran a rec department, a recreation department. So my summers meant that I was going in communities, playing ball with people, learning art, learning how to like mold clay, sometimes it meant going to a garden and actually planting something, and then 3 months later seeing exactly what it was that came out of the ground. I was lucky to live in an environment like that, but it wasn't because of any sort of wealth, because we certainly didn't have that. And I was lucky to live in an environment where even people who didn't necessarily have a lot had access to those things. I did learn that there are very few things that I was able to do alone, and that I and everyone else that I knew was reliant upon somebody else's sense of integrity and someone else's willingness to do for them and others, and that the same was expected of me, with whatever skill, whatever talent that I had that I could bring to the table, that same thing was expected of me. So when you hear in a bio that talks about work and service and honesty, there's not a day that goes by that I don't see all of those things, all of those attributes that are applied in my own daily life. And there's not a school that I don't visit. There's not a playground that I don't visit. There's not a church group where I don't visit, where I don't see, looking just 50 yards ahead of me, seeing those same values play out among young people every single day, and how they interact with one another, how they rely on one another, the lessons that they learn from their coaches and their Sunday school teachers and their elementary school, middle school, and high school teachers. So that's why I say that those same values are so important in how we build a better community, a better society.
Thank you. I have to say I really like that answer, because what you said about especially wealth, people assume that having wealth is the key to being successful and being happy and being able to have opportunities. But I mean, of course it does help, but yes. it's not the overall, and it always starts from home and the environment. We just need each other. We need to support each other, and that's how we're going to make it through. So thank you again for that answer. I really like that.
Thank you, Jade.
Thank you, District Attorney Spencer Merriweather, and thank you, Ms. Jade Jones. Excellent question and also excellent research. That was a real, you did your real research with that question. I like that question. Next, we're going to turn our attention to Ms. Brunella Escate. Please state your school and who your question is directed to. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brunella Escate. I'm from Rocky River High School. My question is for Mr. Raymond Felton. My question is, how are you involving yourself in the youth of the community, and what do you do to help the youth shape their right path?
Good question, Vanilla. I'm just currently moved back to Charlotte, after retiring from the game of basketball. So my biggest thing now is to get started with my my academy. I want to get back within basketball, but I also want to be able to speak and teach to the youth as well too, to help them understand that basketball is for me, it was a job, but for you kids, it's just an extracurricular activity. It's just a path to get you to where you need to be in life, and You know, I use basketball just like everybody that's on this panel use it each and every day. You know what I'm saying? Like basketball is a team thing, but at the same time, it taught me so much. And I want to be able to give that back to the youth here, man. And I see a lot of stuff going on in the world, a lot of stuff going on here in Charlotte, period. And just to be able to just come home now and be able to just start up an academy and be able to have these kids come out and just get out of the house. And I see it every day. I see it with my kids. I drive through the neighborhoods and there's no kids outside. There's no kids being kids no more. And there's just so much technology now, so much distraction, so much YouTube too. It's so much stuff, and you can learn a lot from those things. But also, the kids these days are missing out on being a kid. Be a kid first, like, because you start learning these things too early. You're missing out on your youth. You're missing out on what's important, and that's having freedom. Because once you become an adult, that's when everything kicks in. That's when the bills kicks in. That's when life kicks in. And I want to express that to the youth. I want to express that to you all that's on here, and just understand that, you know, enjoy your time now. Enjoy your life as a kid, because y'all are the future. Y'all really are. And y'all got to get out there, man, and just enjoy yourself. Enjoy being a kid. And I want to bring that back here to Charlotte. Not only basketball skill stuff, but also life skill stuff. And I think that's really going to be big. And I'm just listening to some of the things that's being said tonight, and I'm happy to be a part of this. But yes, I'm just moved back, and how I'm gonna give back is I'm gonna start up with my Team GBMS Basketball Academy, and I'm gonna try to just push and push and push, man, to get more and more kids out there just to get out of the house and just enjoy themselves and just have fun.
Thank you. I like what you said about like being a kid, even though, because like now in current times, it's kind of hard to like just be innocent and free when like everywhere around you it's like, hey, there's violence over there. Like, hey, don't go too far, or you might get shot, or it's like, don't go. Like there's like such like restrictions. Like, hey, you can't really go and be a kid like you used to, because of like current status of COVID and because of like just violence. And it's a nice message.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brunella Escate, and thank you, NBA veteran Mr. Raymond Felton. Next, we're going to go on to our National PAL CEO, Mr. Jeff Hood.
Thanks, Mason. First, I want to address Raymond. We'll be talking as soon as we finish this. Raymond's across the hall from me, so we'll be talking, and Raymond will be getting involved. He doesn't know it yet, but Raymond is going to be getting involved with National PAL all across the country. Look, I'm going to take credit for this one thing. I was actually the first person to bring Raymond to Charlotte in 2002. As he played for Latta High School, and his high school team played in my national high school basketball tournament. So I actually first introduced him to Charlotte. It was just really crazy that he was selected by the Charlotte Bobcats then as their #1 pick a number of years ago. So don't worry, Raymond. When we finish this, we'll be talking after this. So, but have some questions from the Q&A. And one in particular is, this is a great conversation. I'm a parent sitting with my son watching this event. Compliments extended to the mayor, police chief, DA, Microsoft, and PAL. The question is, how can I help my son respond to racism and increase his technical skills? And we're going to first go and take that question to Hollis from Microsoft. Hollis?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Jeff. And I'm happy to hear that both mom and son are consuming and watching this together. I think, as we've heard already, the importance of setting that foundation at home, spending that time together is really important. You know, on the response to racism piece first, because, you know, I love what Mayor Lyles mentioned. Everybody on this panel has experienced at some level, whether it's, you know, overt, outwardly, or something that's rather subtle, which we see some of that quite a bit of that in the corporate world as well. So I think when we talk about our younger generation, I have two sons, 17 and 15, having that self-awareness and self-confidence, knowing that you're not less than, you have the ability to accomplish any and everything that you put your heart, mind, and time to, and not allowing the opinions of others or the fact that you may not see someone who looks like you doing what you're dreaming to do, that's not a barrier, that's not a hindrance. There have been generations before us that have put in hard work and given us a foundation. We need to appreciate that and then stand on their shoulders and reach higher heights. So to the mom and the young man, continue to let your son know that he can accomplish anything on this earth that he wants to accomplish, whether he's the first, somebody's got to be the first, or he follows in the footsteps of those who have charted a path, as I know I'm following in the footsteps of folks who have charted paths for me. With regards to technology, I'm going to tell you that what we're seeing, those of us that are deeply involved in the technology field, is that what we call our digital natives, the younger generation that has always had smartphones, always has seen, the internet and computers and tablets. There is a special skill that we're seeing them develop on how they're able to use technology to solve problems. And so while there's definitely security and safety, just as you would teach your child on how to look both ways before crossing the street, there are a lot of programs in schools through companies like Microsoft. I know it's difficult with COVID to get into some physical locations, but as things open up and as you go to websites, you'll find there's a lot of digital literacy, basic technology courses and capabilities that are available at no cost. And so just as you're watching this together, it's really good to have those conversations about technology, talk about the kind of sites and apps and tools. Just having that open dialogue is the best first start. And then if you want to go further than that, please go to the Microsoft website. There are a ton of free trainings to go to more of an advanced technical level as well, not only for your son, but also for adults, for folks that want to maybe look at other careers or gain new skills. So
great. Thank you, Hollis. And actually, same question for Chief Jennings, and I can restate if need be. Question is, how can I help my son respond to racism and increase his technical skills?
Wow, you're going to make me go after Hollis after that great answer. That was fantastic. I think the phrase "stand on the shoulders of others and reach for your goals and reach for the sky." I think that was fantastic. But what I would say is, don't let what others might think of you or how others might look at you and let that define who you are. Because I think oftentimes, as Black men and women in society, we might, if you buy into being looked as lesser of a person, then if you start buying into that, then you won't get on those shoulders and stand high and reach for your goals. But the best way to me is you have to, one, put yourself out to get to know others that don't look like you, and let those that don't look like you get to know who you are, and being able to experience other people as well. So when you're able to surpass those obstacles and reach high and get those goals and put yourselves in positions, but not only that, when you get there, bring others along with you, because when you can do that, and then they can bring others as well, you can break that cycle. And which is so much needed now. We see it, we talk about it a lot, but we can't sit back and wait on people to give us something or to provide something for us. Get out and take it, and bring others along with you.
Very good. Thank you, Chief. And one additional question that I'm going to pose from the Q&A, and Spencer, I'm going to bring this to you. The question is, how do we curb the anger in young Black men affected by current trauma in the media and economic environments?
Well, I think in many ways, I think I kind of piggyback the answer that Chief Jennings just gave, and I'll say it a different way. We can't let anyone else tell us who we are. We define who we are. Keeping that, Hollis talked a little bit about having a sense of confidence about you as you navigate everything that this world's going to throw at you. That is so important. The first response to whatever sort of adversity comes your way can be to get angry. But there's a certain level of security that comes from knowing who you are and knowing what you're constructed of, knowing, this is how I would have answered this question about racism, knowing what you've withstood. Because the truth is that we talk about the Giants and we talk about the history that comes before us. The fact that we are here in and of itself is a demonstration of just how powerful we are. When we walk with that power, when we walk with that sense of assuredness, that's a sense of security that can keep us from that anger. Can't keep you from feeling it. I wish it could, but it can't. It doesn't mean you're not going to be hurt by some things that you're confronted with. But it can give you that sense of self-assuredness to make it keep going and keep progressing.
Thank you, Spencer. Now, Mason, we're going to turn it back over to you to hear from our youth panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Police Chief Johnny Jennings. Thank you, Mr. Hollis Williams of Microsoft. And thank you, District Attorney Spencer Merriweather. Those are wonderful responses. And thank you, Mr. Jeff Hood. We will now go on to Ms. J. Jones, I apologize. Please state your high school name and please state who your question is directed to. Thank you.
Hi, I go to East Mecklenburg High School and I'm currently a senior. My question is going to be directed to Mayor Vi Lyles, and my question is that Charlotte is the nation's 15th largest city that continues to grow in population. As mayor, does the growing of new residents hinder your plan for affordable housing as prices begin to rise due to the fast influx of new residents?
I think that's a really astute question right now as we on the City Council are debating what we call a comprehensive plan for the city's growth over the next 20 years. It's called the 2040 plan. I would encourage you, if you want a civics lesson, to watch on Monday, the 21st. You'll see, I think, a debate like none other over that plan. So when you say, does it really hinder? Actually, almost every growing city in the country is dealing with this very same issue around affordability. We're growing, but affordability on housing is really a combination of very systemic problems in this country for a long time. After the Depression, when people were building fires outside on the properties in the entire country without food to eat. And a lot of this has to do with the way the federal government has treated the access to mortgages and lending. So many of you are familiar with terms like redlining, where that if you lived in certain neighborhoods, you could not, whether you were Black or poor, be able to get a mortgage. So there's a lot to be said about this. But what I say about today, yes, growth is going to come. There's we are not building a wall around the city limits. There are no borders between Charlotte and Huntersville, Cornelius, no borders between us and Gaston County. So as people come, we've got to deal with this. So the idea that we continue to invest $50 million in making affordable housing every 2 years more available, the idea that we are trying to increase the density and allow people to live in duplexes and triplexes in this community, it will always be, I think, an issue that we will never have sufficient affordable housing until we have wages that pay people enough for their work and value their ability to contribute to our to their workplaces, we won't solve this problem with just building housing. This is an issue around how much people get paid. You're never going to be able to live in Charlotte if you're making $15 an hour. It might be good for teenagers to learn ethics of work, making $10 or $15 an hour. But when we have adults making less than $30,000 a year with a family, there is no way in the world that they're going to be able to afford to live in any city in this community. And that's why affordable housing is so complicated. It's that if you look at the distance between executive pay and worker pay, years ago it was like this far apart. Now it's this far apart. We're a city of wealth, a country of wealth, but not everybody shares in that wealth, and that's what we really have to address. That'll be something your generation can tackle, making sure people can have work that they can live on. There are experiments going on now, but those things are few and far between. So you guys, I'm going to depend on you guys to start handling this one.
Thank you. And I already knew that question was going to be a tough one because it's constantly changing and it's a topic that has so many different factors that contribute to that. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Vi Lyles, and thank you, Ms. J. Jones. Our next question is going to come from Mr. Khalil Smith. Please state your school and who your question is directed to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mason. Hello, everyone. My name is Khalil Stith. I'm 16, and I'm a rising junior at Rocky River. And my next question is directed to Mr. Raymond Felton. Due to your powerful influence as a professional athlete, how can you use your platform to encourage academic success for our young African-American males?
Good question. I kind of spoke on it a little bit earlier. As an athlete, you have to also know that I had to have the work in order to get to the level I was at. I had to do my schoolwork, take an SAT. Had to have a certain score in order to get into Carolina, which is where I attended school for college. And like academics is the number one thing. That's the most important thing. You can play whatever sport in the world you want to play. When you get done with basketball's over with. That's not going to last forever. I knew I wasn't going to play until I was 65, 70 years old. I'm 37. I still consider myself very young. So, and I'm done. I'm retired. So you have to have something to fall back on. So that's why education is very important. And I speak that into my kids' life every day. That's more important. Yeah, everybody want to be the new LeBron James, Steph Curry, whoever the new up and coming athletes are. But at the end of the day, you still got to get education, because the realization of the fact is not everybody's going to make it to the NBA. Not everybody's going to make it to the NFL. Not everybody's going to make it professionally in whatever sport there is. So education is the number one thing. If you can get a free scholarship, use your athleticism to get a free scholarship to a school, that's what you need to do. And that's also one of the things that I want to come back and do, because I used to have a whole program called Team Felton. And I had over 150 kids that went to college, that went to D1, through my basketball program. So I want to come back to get that stuff back started so I can help, because education is the number one thing. If you ain't got no education, you're going to struggle in this world. And that's something that I will definitely tell all the young Black kids in this world, like, get your education. That's the number one thing. I know everybody want to play sports. Everybody want to be an athlete. Everybody want to be an upcoming rapper or whatever it is they want to be. Get your education first. You got to have that. You have to have that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Khalil Smith, and thank you, Mr. Raymond Felton. Next, we're going to have Miss Emily Mills. Please state your school name and who your question is directed to.
Hi, my name is Emily Mills. I'm a freshman in North Carolina Agricultural Technical State. My question is for Hollis Williams. What I want to ask you is, what is your job that you do at Microsoft, and what do you like about it?
Thank you for the question. And that's a good one. So at this point for Microsoft, I actually work with a lot of our government customers. And so when government is looking to bring technology to help improve the lives of the youth and the residents and the citizens, I help bring all of Microsoft to their doorstep to help them get that done. So whether it's signing in to certain government services or looking at data and information, the technology that Microsoft has helps to make that a lot easier for governments to do. Think less paper, think being able to do digital things on your phone to pay a bill or to get access to services. So I run a team that focuses on that, and I kind of help shape that strategy across the U.S. So, and what I love about it is the fact that I get to make a good living, but I get to do well. I call it doing good while doing well, right? So, and I'm really, really passionate about those outcomes that we focus on and drive. The other piece I'll just add on real quick to this is that the work that our government leaders do tirelessly is so important to our quality of life and to all of us being able to have a good experience. The work that Chief Jennings does, that District Attorney Merriweather, Mayor Lyles, a lot of times it's a labor of love. And as they put that work in and technology continues to grow, it is so important that not just Microsoft, but that every technology company comes alongside our civic leaders and helps bring those powerful tools to bear so that they can do their job to the best of their ability with all of the assets that are available. So, but thank you for asking the question.
Thank you, Mr. Hollis, and thank you, Ms. Emily Mills. We're going to go ahead to Mr. Jeff Hood for our next Q&A question.
Yes, thanks, Mason. Okay, so most evening, our young people have been asking questions of the adult panel. Now there's a question for each of our youth panelists, right? And take a quick second to think about the question. The question is, and we're gonna kind of start with, I'm gonna start with Emily first. Emily, the question is, as a young person growing up in the Charlotte Mint Hill community, what is it within this community that aggravates you or concerns you the most?
Thank God somebody asked me this. Okay, so for me, I'm an Afro-Latina, so what makes me like upset is when people come. I'm obviously brown skin, so when I am in public and I'm speaking Spanish or I'm talking to somebody about my culture, they like, oh, I thought you were black, but I guess they don't know that you can be black and Hispanic. But yeah, that is one thing that really like aggravates me. And also for me, another thing is I go to A&T and I got a full scholarship to go to A&T. And a lot of people pretty much think that just because I'm like a brown skinned girl that I'm not as smart enough. And I was valedictorian, so I must have something that nobody else has for me to get all these accomplishments in like a whole week. So I don't like when people try to, I guess, make me seem less than what I am just because I'm a girl, just because I'm brown skinned, just because I'm black or Hispanic doesn't mean that I'm not smart enough to be valedictorian or to have a full ride based on my academics. And yeah, that just makes me upset. But other than that, nothing really. I just like my community because it's like a black and brown community. I'm around people that look like me, so it makes it better. And if I was by like a PWR, I don't know what I would do. But I like being around people that look like me, and get to think the same way I do because it just makes me feel more comfortable.
Yes. Thank you. And actually, Emily, I was going to bring that up before we got off of the call that Emily is very well accomplished. She was the valedictorian at Rocky River High School and has full scholarship to North Carolina A&T University, and she's going to be majoring in biology. So hats off to Emily and all as well. And don't worry, she's not going too far, so I'll still be keeping in touch with her and making sure that she's on the right path as well. Okay, next question, same question. We're going to place to Khalil. Khalil, same question. What is it that you struggle with or you find to be, a little kind of troublesome and bothersome for you growing up in Charlotte?
Well, thank you for that question, Mr. Hood. Wow. Just the thought that, because like sometimes like we'll see what happens on the news to say George Floyd, for example. Like just the fact that I have to have conversations with my parents about this sort of thing, it kind of like, I just don't understand, like, do we really have to have these, it's really to a point where we have to have these types of conversations? Because like the stress and all of what happens, we don't know what's going to happen when we go out there. We don't know if we'll come through the door at the end of the day. Like, we never know what's going to happen. And like having those conversations like sort of loosens the tension, because like they'll tell us, what to do, what not to do. Just keep calm, keep composure. Like when stuff like that happens.
Okay. Thank you, Khalil. And Khalil is also on an awesome path at Rocky River High School as well. And looking forward to him achieving some wonderful and great things as well with our PAL initiative at Rocky River High School as well. So thank you, Khalil. Next, we're gonna same question to Brunella. Brunella?
Hi. So I'm technically part of Mecklenburg, but same thing. So like what concerns me the most, like I am a first generation immigrant. So like my parents immigrated here from Peru and I was born here. And what frustrates me, it just annoys me the most is that people think that immigrants can't do things as like normal citizens could, like they don't work as hard, or they don't do things as hard, because like I know, I've heard the stories of what my parents told me when they immigrated here. I know what they did. And it annoys me that they just like minimize us so much for no reason. It's like at first when they immigrated here, they went to New Jersey. And New Jersey is like a really hard place to make it because of like all of like the snow, the rent, and like a lot of stuff. And like I know like they like went to like poverty and stuff, and then they came to North Carolina and then things started going up and up. And yet they still get underestimated so much, or like we can go somewhere and get dirty looks at people. Or like we could just like go like a Walmart and it's like someone is giving us like the stink eye from like across the store, and it's like, is there a problem? And it concerns me so much because it's like, there's like so much like, it's not necessarily racism, but like, it is racism, but it's like not verbal. It's like more like body language, and it's still hurts. It's like it's not what we deserve for what we've been through and what they've been through, because they deserve so much. And you don't, because they're like, oh, you guys can't make it in the world. Just go back to your country and like back on your country where like we might get killed, or like a country of like there's so much conflict that it's so annoying. Thank you.
Thank you, Brunella. And Brunella is also one of our leaders in our Rocky River Mentor Program through PAL, Menhill PAL program as well. So I want to thank as well Brunella, and we'll definitely be hearing more from Brunella, I promise you, going forward as well. Lastly, I want to bring up Jade. Jade, same question. Is Jade still there? There she goes.
It was taking a while, sorry. You know how the internet is. Anyways, to answer that question, I'd have to say I'd word it as lack of education as a whole, and I'm not talking academics. I think of just being a well-rounded person and listening to other people. That's something that a lot of people lack, and it causes a bunch of the problems that were just mentioned, such as like racism, stereotyping, just all those issues. If we were just able to listen to each other and not be ignorant, because without a doubt, ignorant is bliss, because when you're just ignoring the situations that need attention and have to be talked about, that's when you're in your most peaceful state, because you're living in your own world and you're going by what you believe and solely what you believe, instead of challenging your own thoughts to try and understand the people around you more, because this is life. We're surrounded by people. We have to interact. That's how you're going to get by. You don't just live on your own. You're always going to be meeting new people and experiencing new things with others around you. So I think it's the lack of education in terms of the world, because being well-rounded in those terms would help out with so many problems and injustices and just everything in general. So I'm hoping that can be something that continues to progress and improve as time goes on. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jade. And even though Mason is coming to us from New Orleans, where we in August will be hosting our National PAL training and conference, I want to get Mason's perspective on the same question. Mason, what's your thoughts as well?
Can you repeat the question right quick, please?
Yeah, the question is not necessarily in Charlotte, but what is it, maybe even as being a young person growing up today, what are some of those things that provide angst to you or concern within either your community or just in growing up and being a young person today, in today's society?
I thank you for the question again. I feel that many of the youth of the United States can agree with me on this. The status of our education and the level of higher achievement that we may achieve, I think that's very worrisome in our community. As a youth in America, we question whether or not our education level is on the same as another student in another state. Community-wise, I think most of us fear of, especially like lower income communities, I think we more fear of, will we get home, like I think Khalil or Emily said earlier, will we wake up the next day affected by gun violence or just violence in our city? Are our best interests, and I'm sorry, do the politicians have our best interests? And I think that's a lot of things that we consider. And yeah, so like being a youth in our community, a lot of the things that come up are the status of our education and our violence, and if we'll live to see the next day.
Great. Thank you, Mason, and thank you for being our moderator for this evening. Guys, we are coming upon the 7:30 time frame, and like each of our other sessions that we've done across the country, these 14 sessions, now 15, we can always go on and on even much longer in hearing from our young people and inviting them to the table. That's why we provide with National PAL and supported by Microsoft and Extended Stay America this platform to hear from our young people. And I think tonight was no different, that I'm very much encouraged, and I think all of our adult panelists are encouraged as well by hearing by the line of questions and intrigue from our young people that we are still in good hands in spite of what people say, that we need people to cover these types of events and to cover hearing from successful youth that are doing very positive things within not just this community, but across this country, instead of all of the negative things that are constantly being preyed upon us and pressed upon us. You know, I frown upon this one statement that a media person told me quite a long time ago, and it always stays with me. and I despise the statement, but the statement was, Jeff, if it don't bleed, it don't lead. I just totally despise that question, because that's saying that in spite of all the wonderful and great things that that are taking place in communities, you let somebody either shoot somebody, smack somebody, or does something unjustly, and that's either not going to be addressed or heard, or is going to be way on the backside when we have 30 seconds left of the news. So with that, we are going to close this session of it, but I wanted to very quickly, very quickly, if we can just hear 30 seconds of or less from each of our adult panelists on their thoughts on this evening, and any closing thoughts that they may have. And we'll start with Chief Jennings.
Thank you, Jeff. First of all, I'll give an application to each of the youth panelists. What excellent questions, because I'd love to see them all join our police department someday. But just the questions were fantastic, and I'll tell you, even hearing from when you hear Mayor Lyles talk about the 2040 plan, and then that Mayor Jay Jones will be seeing that plan come to fruition one day. So, right. But it's important that we have these conversations for the young people. It's important to have those conversations. I'm proud to be able to serve on the panel with such distinguished guests, and just keep standing on those shoulders, keep reaching for your goals. Each and every one of you, I have no doubt, will be very successful in whatever you plan on doing. So thanks for having me.
Great, thanks, Chief. Hollis?
Yeah, I'm going to echo and follow suit. Just very thankful to be a part of the conversation. And as I mentioned earlier, having a 17 and 15-year-old, this gives me hope that our next generation is in good hands, and so just amazingly proud of every single one of you. And so thankful to you, Jeff, for your leadership, Mayor, Chief, District Attorney. I mean, these types of public-private conversations are exactly what our youth need to see, which is different groups and organizations coming together, looking at what's best for all, not just looking at our own silo. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Hollis. Raymond?
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you inviting me on to be a part of this. To all the panelists, thank you. It's been an honor to be on here with you, Mayor, with you, Chief, Hollis, Mr. Spencer, everybody, and all the kids, all the youth panelists. It's been an honor. The future is bright. I know we've been going through some rough times, with the pandemic and just everything that's been going on in the world. But the future is bright. The future is very bright, and I want y'all to keep it pushing, keep this thing going, and wish y'all nothing but the best of luck, man. Man, this has been nothing but amazing. I enjoy this. I would definitely do this again anytime. I love this. This was a lot of fun. So thank you, and I wish y'all kids nothing but the best, man.
Great. Thank you, Raymond. Spencer?
I think Raymond nailed it, and I will say that it's been really instructive for me to just see what you guys care about, the things that you are engaged in. You are so engaged at such a young age that it's a great window for the rest of us who are doing what we can to try to impact the community around you, to know what it is that you care about. So I also don't want you to think that this was just about your education. It really was about our education. And so just like Raymond said, I'm happy to come back anytime, and thank you for letting me be a part of this.
Great, thank you, Spencer. And Mayor Lyles?
I want to just say this, that to say thank you to Jeff for the invitation. Really, when this was happening, I thought at 6 o'clock. I started at like 7 this morning. I was like, nah, maybe not. but he pushed me into it, and it's been a very, I think the other panelists understand what I'm saying. I want to say to Hollis that Microsoft has really cared about kids, and they've cared about creating opportunities, Girls Who Code, all of those things that you guys do as programs. I just want to say we're glad that you're here. In Charlotte, I know that if I could move more of you here, that would be a great idea. So we should work on that. Raymond Felton, I can't tell you how many times I watch you play as a Bobcat. And you know, I went to grad school at Chapel Hill, so those blue shirts really mean a lot to me. All of you, Spencer knows all of this. But what I want to say to the young people on this call is that when we were coming along, or at least let me speak for myself, when I was coming along, the world was very small. It was like as far as you could go to your downtown. It was as far as you went to your school, and you couldn't see what you can see today. And I want you to take advantage of it. There were no programs that you could go abroad and study that were available to people, as you say, Emily, about being a brown-skinned girl, that, you know, we just didn't even know. So soak it in, soak all that knowledge in, and go wherever it takes you. And it won't always be pretty, and sometimes you'll make a mistake. But you know, sometimes some of the best lessons in life are learned when you took a wrong turn on something. So I say to you, embrace it. Embrace the value of this great world out here and go make that big difference. My favorite saying is that from Maya Angelou, who said, people may not remember what you say, they may not remember what you do, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. So go out there and make people feel good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, thank everyone for participating. Trust me, I know I get some of those calls as well of trying to be a part of something. And it's like, what time is that again? So it's almost worse because I have to deal with that on the East Coast and the West Coast. So it's really little difficult, but it's about our young people, and I know that you guys have really made a significant impact, not just with the young people that are on currently, but the numbers of young people all across this country that have tuned in to this session as well. I want to thank you for that as well, and thank you, Microsoft, Extended Stay America, Michelle, Thomas, and Cindy, and Mashara. Thank you, everyone, for making this happen. And we still have 5 of these left to go. We're going to be in Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Maryland, Los Angeles, New York, and Louisville, Kentucky. So we still have those 5 cities still yet to go. And hopefully you guys will tune in to hear from young people as well from all across this country. So on behalf of the National Association of Police Athletic Activities Leagues, and our board of directors, I thank you for participating this evening. We will have a survey in the chat section, so if you get an opportunity, for those tuning in, please take the time to fill out our survey. And until the next time, thank you, be safe, and God bless. Take care.